So today, the next few days, you're going to be hearing a lot about programmatic data, big data, algorithms, all these tech-focused terms that marketers now have to get their heads around, and they do need to get their heads around. But I actually think that's not the most important to think about as we're looking at an increasingly digital landscape. I think the most important thing that we should be concentrating on as marketers is still a very human thing. It's an age-old thing, and to me that's around trust. So today I just want to give you a bit of a view on why we think that's so important at Outbrain, and why I personally, as a ex-marketing director and an ex-person in a big publisher, why I think it's so crucial that we focus in on that. And I ask your help to help me protect it, but we'll see at the end if you agree. So I think a big part of trust is knowing who's talking to you. So I'll just start quickly by introducing me and Outbrain. Can I just see a show of hands? Has anyone heard of Outbrain before it was up on the wall today? There you go. Very few. That's good. Lots of upside, Gulshan. So what we do at Outbrain is we invented this space called content discovery. So this is CNN. This could be Times of India. A lot of Indian publishers we're working with. But you see here, I scroll to the bottom of the article, and then I see these recommendations. On one side, there's the promoted stories. So this is companies like Shridhar's who are trying to get a big audience to their content. They provide their content in there. And then on the right-hand side, it's CNN's content. It's using our algorithms. We've got over 70 algorithms that personalise content recommendations to the individual and hopefully then add value to their experience as they're on CNN, on Times of India, as they discover new content. We work with a huge amount of publishers around the world, over 100,000 of some of the biggest and best, including some great publishers in this part of the world, with India being our biggest market in the Asia footprint at this stage. And we drive scale in terms of an audience, like a very big scale. And this is probably the difference where the technology comes in, is that now you do have the opportunity as a marketer to get a very, very big audience to your content. Gone are the days where you would build content and then hope people would come to it. Now you've got the ability to get a very, very big audience to it and control that audience. So, I'm not here to talk about Outbrain though, I'm here to talk about trust. And I think that we have a really big trust problem. Not necessarily just in digital marketing, although I think it is pronounced there, but in society as a whole. So if we have a look at this is the Edelman Trust Barometer. They do this every year. It's a really fascinating bit of research. If you haven't had a look at it, there's some good information you can get available online. And in here you'll see for the first time in the history of the survey, the amount of distrusters is more than the amount of trusters. First time ever. So I reckon that's a bit worrying. That's a bit depressing. Lots of depressing things going on around the world, so maybe some of that's not surprising. On a good note, you'll see that India is the second most trusting country in the entire globe. So that's pretty amazing. That's great. I feel that when I come here and visit. This is you'll see the difference too from 2014 to 2015, and you also see an increase there in Indonesia, and both of these are because of the amazing elections that happened in your country and in Indonesia, and you'll see China's improved too because they've really cracked down on corruption in that part of the world. So big movements like elections and new leaders make really big impacts on the trust, and you'll see that playing out here. If we break that down again, this is globally, you'll see that NGOs, media, and business have all declined year on year. So that's where the depressing side comes in, but the government elements fueled by these elections has increased. So a little glimmer of hope there. Now, why should you care about all of this? Well, if we then pull that down into a business environment, the impacts of having trust or not having trust are pretty significant. And it means selling products becomes easier, and we've just heard how forming a relationship changes the way people look at products. People do your marketing for you. They recommend to friends. They comment about your product when they trust you. And also your yield can improve and your margins can improve because a trusted brand. People are willing to pay more for a trusted brand. So on a macro sense, as business people and as marketers, a really, really important element. But that's probably not telling you something you don't overly know. just one example on here, because trust is very important too, not just in terms of how to grow your business, but also if things don't happen that great in your business. And is there any car people in the room? Automotive? Right, so Toyota had an awful year last year in terms of recalls. Just looking at the Australian market, they recalled over 300,000 cars, which is a big number in Australia. Not only did they have to recall their cars, so they had product issues, they also had to lay off huge amounts of people and they closed down production. So these are two big things as a car maker that are going to impact your trust. And as a result of that, not surprisingly, there were some big financial losses. But those losses were pretty contained in the recalls, nothing else. All the underlying business was still chugging along pretty well. But the key measure that shows the opportunity that Toyota has here is their trust. So this is from Roy Morgan, and it looks across all the car makers and looks at Toyota here as a stable trust year on year and the highest trust in the industry, despite the fact they've been through those really, really big impacts on their trust. And that has been built on years of great product, years of very honest communication, and put them into a position where this year, I have some friends who are high up in that business, their financials will go back and over what they were the year before this all happened. So trust is really important. And I think we'd all agree that brands need that trust if they really want to fuel growth, particularly if they want to grow quickly. The problem in a digital world, though, is that people don't trust online ads. Struggling, with the quality of the presentation here, but trust me, down below here, we're looking at banner ads and ads on mobile devices. Less than 50% of people say that they somewhat or trust those vehicles to deliver a message. So that's a really, really, really big problem, considering that we have spent so much of our time and money focused on this for many years to build our brands online. And why is that trust so bad? So I haven't picked an Indian site, but I could have. But I picked a site from another country here, just to sort of as a representation of when things go really, really bad. So you'll notice that there are some sites that give pop-ups before you can get to the content, bring up things out of the right rail, down from pop-ups from the bottom. They're trying so hard to monetize the page, and thinking about their economics, they've forgotten about their user, and they've applied an age-old, more advertising approach of disruption to online and to content in a way that's had horrible effects. So this is the click-through rate of the banner ads globally from 1996 through to 2007. And you'll notice that it's just fallen off a cliff. It's fallen off a cliff because people are trusting these ads less and less. They're getting annoyed at them, and they're going completely blind to them. So now, almost 50% of the ads that are shown are not even seen, let alone clicked on, and that number's about 1 in 1,000 ads are clicked on. So as a digital marketer, looking at an increasingly digital world and reviewing what the key vehicle to build my brand is doing, that's a big issue and something that needs to be dealt with. From a publisher's point of view, this loss of audience trust is creating these massive sways of wasteland. So if some of you may not be familiar with these heat maps, most of you probably are, but the heat map shows here, the red is where people engage. Not surprisingly, that's in the content. The blue, the cold bits, is where people aren't engaged, and that's in the spaces that we've traditionally put ads. So this publisher here has essentially given up about, I don't know, what is that, a third, if not more, of its page to blankness because of an ongoing abuse of the real estate that they have and ongoing abuse of the user trust. So a big issue. That was the bad news. The good news is that we've identified that we have issues with banner ads and mobile ads. Not to say they don't work. They do work in certain places. People like Google do a fantastic job at helping target ads far more effectively. So there are some, there's some hope there. But I think the bigger hope when we're looking at as digital marketers and increasingly putting our money into that space is up the top here. And again, hard to read for you, I apologise. But these are things like a company's website, number one, recommendations online by other people, and also editorial content. They're the three that are up there, with the highest levels of trust that are associated with them. And the good news is, as content marketers, these are exactly the areas that we can influence and work with to engage an audience at scale. There's some other research here that goes deeper into different types of content marketing, whether it's sponsored content, recommendations like what Outbrain do, or using social to engage your content, or use that as a channel to get an audience to your content. And all of those are showing really promising improvements on trust, and show that we do have an opportunity to utilise this moving forward. So all of this shows us that we seem to have a win-win-win opportunity in content marketing. A win for the publisher, because they can drive engagement, they can hopefully build user or audience trust rather than pull it away with ads. And it provides a consistent and a very material growing native monetization opportunity for them. So a whole lot of pluses there for them. For a marketer, it gives a platform to engage an audience, particularly those that you haven't dealt with before, as we've just heard. It gives a platform around authenticity of telling your story rather than having other people telling your story, and provides that opportunity to start the relationship and earn the right to sell to an audience. And then the consumer gets an experience that should provide value to them, that doesn't distract them from what they're on the page to do, but actually engages them in the story and takes them with it. The other good news with the consumer is that 82% of them say they don't care if that content is produced by Times of India or produced by Live and Style. They don't care. What they care about is value. Is it valuable to me? Is it giving me what I'm after? Is it entertaining me? Or is it informing me on a subject that's important to me? So some good news there. Another bit of good news around this, again, borrowing from the Edelman Trust Survey, is that you see here the most trusted content creators. You know, right up there are companies that I already have a relationship with, a company's CEO, and employees of a company. All three of these can be used really effectively in content marketing plans to tell your story. Interestingly, those three are more trusted than a journalist. And this is numbers out of India. In some other markets, that's far more pronounced, and journalists tend to be right almost down near the bottom in some markets. So we talked about this curve, worrying curve from a display advertising perspective. Now if I look at it from a different perspective and use our Outbrain click-through rates of our paid inventory, so not the publisher's content, but people who are paying to get their content discovered, and we look at how that's gone just over the last couple of years. And you'll see it's a very different curve. So we'll take that off because it's a different time scale. But you see here a really nice growth rate of click-through rate of paid content recommendations on sites all around India. And that it continues to go up to the right. The reason for this is that, one, people trust the environment in which these recommendations are placed. Two, brands are getting much better at building great content that is really delivering value. And you've seen one example of one of those great brands in India today. And three, the technology is getting better and better. It's learning and evolving and becoming more effective of getting the right bit of content in front of the right person at the right time. So again, a good indicator of the trust in this content marketing space. The other thing we look at Outbrain is we constantly do surveys on the pages that we're on and just check how we're going relative to other opportunities. The green area here is all of the publisher's content. So unsurprising here, it's got really high trust. So 94% trust in these green areas of the publisher's content. In this case, it's ESPN. Down the bottom here, the content recommendations from Outbrain that work within that content experience, pretty high levels of trust. The number down there is 34%. So 34% trust down below. And you compare that to the ad up the top is about, I think it's 18%, might even be a bit less than that. So almost double the trust in the content recs, and a lot more than that in the content of the publisher. So that's all great. We've got a trust problem. You know, what should we do about it, and how can we play our part within, I suppose, defining how this category moves forward. It feels like we're just at a point where it's a real ringing of a bell. So not just in content marketing, I think in digital marketing in total. I think issues around data and data leakage are really scaring people. You know, cookies and how we collect data and who collects what and how they tell people, make people clear about what they are collecting. There's a lot of scary things that are going on, and I think if as an industry we really need to rally, I think, around 2 points, and those 2 points to me are transparency and respect. So transparency in terms of letting the user know exactly what they're getting themselves in for at any point of time, and respect in terms of not trying to get in their way of what they're trying to do. Forget about the old advertising approach of trying to distract someone out of a TV program with a 30-second ad. It's still effective in that environment. That's all great. Online is very, very different. We've got to look at not trying to distract people, more how to engage them, how to work with their content experience. So I think if we took these 2 words and then looked at, you know, how the challenges we've got and then what we can do about those, I'll just take a couple of minutes to do that. So the first point is around transparency, and I do think that trust is very much at risk. So we showed you those measures around content marketing and how well they're currently doing. But there are some, you know, they're I suppose the green shoots that are coming up of hope, but there are some weeds growing in here as well. And I think the biggest weed is around transparency. So here are some content recommendations, but these could be these could be all sorts of different things from different partners. And you'll see that these all look like content, not maybe great content, maybe not content that all of you would click on, but certainly it's content. Problem is, in most cases, and I'll show you this in a second, this isn't content. This is ads masquerading as content. So we put a very big, strong label on it, and we call it spam content. And the difference between spam content and authentic content is spam content is pretending it's content, but it's really an ad. It's fine to be an ad. Ads are okay, but don't pretend you're something you're not. Don't try and trick someone into clicking on something and then give them something very different. The difference between that and authentic content, in our view, is that authentic content offers a either informational or entertainment value to the audience without trying to knock them over the head with some corporate message at that point. So what does authentic content look like? Publisher content, we've talked about how well that is trusted. Brand blogs, content hubs playing an increasing role, and a really, really powerful role, I think, with lots of investment going in these, producing fantastic content. And I'll talk about one of those later on, which also answers the question, I think she's gone, about B2B marketing a little bit. Sponsored content, so I think this is an amazing opportunity, not only for brands, but also for publishers, is utilising the publisher's trust, utilising the publisher's expertise in building great content, and utilising the publisher's audience is a really good win-win, and some fantastic content's being produced that way. And then authentic third-party reviews. So, you know, one of the things when, as Outbrain, we go and talk to people, particularly in new markets for us, and we say, you know, here's Outbrain, you should use Outbrain. They go, we don't have content. Or we've got content, it's not that great content. Mostly it's not true. Everyone has content. Every big brand does some PR work. Every big brand gets commentary on their products and services, and it's out there in the public domain. So every big brand can grab that content and then amplify it to a much bigger audience than it did before. So authentic third-party reviews, really, really powerful in the older world, but also more powerful in the new world of content marketing. So all of these authentic content doing a great job for everybody. On the other side of the scale is the spam content. So this one, money-making schemes, I'm sure you've seen this. You know, they look like they're sort of content that you think, oh, okay, might sort of click on that. But when you click onto it, you get almost no content, certainly no content of value. And really all they're trying to do is sign you up to a newsletter that you can never sign off, okay? Health scams, pretty much the same model, no content, trying to sign you up for something that doesn't continue or doesn't deliver. This is my pet hate, is product pages. To me, this is just incredibly lazy marketing, where product managers or marketers just grab a product page, put a little spin on it. You see here, they've got a headline and they've got 2 lines of copy or 2 lines of copy, and then it's a product page. You know, just incredibly lazy, has no respect for the audience whatsoever. Someone clicks on that thinking, oh, I'm going to get 3 odd foods that destroy abdominal fat. Maybe not a headline I click onto, but you think you're going to get content out of that, but no, you don't. You just get sold a product. So, so not a great experience. And then these are the most insidious parts of content at the moment, I think. Hopefully you'll agree with me. These are fake review sites. So we talked about third-party reviews and how important they are and how trusted they are. Well, these try and leverage off that trust, but basically try and dupe people. So these are not third-party reviews. These are reviews written by the company about the company's products, trying to sell those companies' products. So essentially, they're masquerading, not as ads, but just they're masquerading completely. So people click on these thinking they're getting a third-party review, but they're actually getting a review from the company itself. So all of these, every time someone clicks on one of these, it erodes trust. Every time they click on it and they get something that they don't expect to be getting, it erodes trust. And I think that's a thing with trust. There's a quote, it's like an eraser. Like every time, it gets smaller and smaller after every mistake. So every single time that someone thinks they're getting something and gets something else, it chips away at the trust. So if it's a company doing that, it might not hit you to begin with, but it will hit you over time. If it's a publisher that's doing that, well, publishers kind of have done that with display ads in a certain degree, with tooth whitening and this kind of stuff. They haven't paid care and attention on the quality, on the authenticity of the ads they've put on their pages, which have ended up, eroding that trust. And I think these content recommendations and stuff like that can do an even worse, have an even bigger impact. The second thing I want to talk about is respecting the journey. So, that was we didn't actually swear. We didn't swear. We didn't share our presentations before today. But what you were talking about there, Sridhar, is exactly this: is understanding where people are in the journey and knowing what messages you give to them at what point of the journey. And I think with content, there is a tendency to try and push everything to the last click, everything to that last transaction. And although content can play a good role in that, and there are more and more tools to enable you to measure the return on investment for more acquisition type activity, where its real power is driving intent of introducing your brand to a user, to someone who wasn't familiar with it before, and bringing them on the journey to a point where they become your customer. And I think the important thing about this is just taking a step back, is looking at content and the definition of content as a verb is about satisfying someone. So giving them content is what content's about, giving them value. So if we focus on giving them value versus just what we want at the end, which is a transaction, we will grow an audience and we'll grow our customer base. And this is a book by Aaron Shapiro that talks about this theory about, and again, it's very similar to what you were talking about, is, if you grow your user base, you should, if you're doing it right, grow your customer base at the same ratio. So growing your user base or growing your audience, the first thing you need to do is just cut through all of that amazing clutter that's out there in the marketplace. With people having so many options to spend their day, how do you cut through that? How do you get in front of them? We've seen display ads, it's becoming harder to do that through that. So content is a really great opportunity, but we need to take people on the journey through that. And just one last point on this, if we look at this slide again about content creators, and if you have a look right down the bottom here, the least trusted content creator is a brand that I don't use. To me, that's a really important point, because unless you start building trust with someone, I think it's a huge waste of money to be trying to push a transactional message in front of someone who you haven't warmed up, who you haven't formed a relationship with, because they don't trust you. And if they don't trust you, you might be able to sell to them, but it's a lot harder to sell to someone that doesn't trust you than it is to someone that does trust you. So I think it's about taking your time. And here's just some examples of that. Has anyone seen this before? American Express Open Forum? A few people nodding. So if you haven't, have a look at it, particularly if you're in B2B marketing, particularly if you're focused on small business. This is a great example of content marketing that started before we had a term called content marketing, I think. So it's been around for many years. And basically it's a website that engages with small businesses and helps them succeed. And I know this is very wordy, but I thought I'd just put exactly what their strategy is there. That it's around helping small businesses stay in business. So focusing on insights and tools and things that can help those small businesses improve. You don't see in any of this strategy sell more credit cards, sign up credit cards. And you don't see any of those messages on this website. The kind of content you see on this website, how to build an unforgettable personal brand, 5 things successful people do that others don't, yada yada, lots more of that. With people like Richard Branson, who is writing for this blog, and other leading business leaders. And because of that, they've formed an incredible audience. They build trust. Yes, at the end of the day, they're hoping that they sell more credit cards to small business, but they're respecting the journey. And there's a couple of other examples. You've already seen this website, so I won't spend too much time, but I do think it's a lovely example. And when we're presenting in other parts of the world, we use Live in Style as an example. There's another site that Sridhar's also pretty familiar with, because his namesake and what would we call him? Your student? Would he like that or not? Probably not. So he's there with at Madura Fashion, and they've got with one of their labels, they've created a site called Label, which is doing a similar thing. It's trying to engage people in a lifestyle message before it starts talking about their products. In this case, amazing shirts. Yeah, the Louis Phillips site, sorry. And then one other example is, I can't do a content marketing presentation without bringing up Red Bull at some point. I think this is a great example because, one, we all know that they spend a lot of care and attention on building content, and in fact, their content business now makes more money, I'm told, online than their soft drink money, than their soft drink business, which is pretty amazing when you think about how a marketing program started off as a marketing program has now become a very, very significant business vertical for them. They're also selling to a really, really hard audience. The millennials are incredibly hard to connect with. So doing that en masse is really an art form. I was going to show you the famous balloon because it was just a nice way to finish looking at it. Has everyone seen that where the guy Felix jumps out of the balloon at 25,000 feet? It's an incredible bit of content, incredibly well shot, amazing idea, and it just went nuts. I've seen everything from 1 million tweets in the first 2 days to 60 million social media transactions over the initial months. 3 months after doing this, they were still 7% up in direct tweets and Facebook messages around drinking or wanting Red Bull. So there was a direct business benefit as well. From memory, they were on 40 different networks across 50 countries. They had something like 30 million viewers on YouTube. Anyway, you get the idea. Very successful. I don't think I can play it because I think we have a audio issue, but we'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, then I'll flip through.
Release.
If you're scared, walk away, 'cause there's no need to feel ashamed. Yeah, we all feel the same. Whoa, where's your passion? Where's your fighting?
All right, now. The whole road's looking on. I'm going over. Jumper away. Speed 725. Showing Felix in a stable descent. And Felix is back to hold safely, the new world record holder.
So, pretty cool content. Maybe content at the extreme in both regards to what they did to the idea, but also the investment in that. But it's hard to actually find a record of exactly how much they spent. There's rumours of a couple of million, maybe more than that, in developing that content. But if you think about the reach I just talked about before, it's actually quite a small investment considering the free reach that they got off the back of it. They also make money on this content as well. So I think, investing time, investing some money, building great content that's focused on engaging someone, an audience, and taking them on a journey towards transaction, it builds trust and it wins you the right to transact with them. And it's a very powerful example of how, when it works well. I'm just leaving you with 5 tips that kind of summarises some of the points from today. One is, at the heart of this is respecting our customers, our audience, and respecting their time. And being respectful, knowing how you interact with them at what point of their journey, whether that's through content or whether it's in a bar, as we heard in the last presentation. Investing in authentic content that really adds value to that audience will really pay off, both in terms of the short term, but also more importantly, build over time. I think earning the right to sell before you hit people on the head with a message is always a smart thing to do as approaching content marketing. We didn't cover it too much, but you saw on Amex, like building your own trusted platform. We saw that heat map and the red zone of where people go to look online. You can be the red zone now. You can build your own content platforms, and we've seen example of that earlier, that you are the reason people are online. You're not the ones trying to distract them from that purpose. And I just call upon all of you, it's like a call of arms, if you believe in content marketing as a really powerful part of your digital marketing mix and increasingly your whole mix, you've got to work with me here. You've got to fight to maintain this trust. Because the more of that spammy stuff that happens, and the more times we rip people off or dupe them or don't respect them, then the more chance we have of content marketing going down the same slippery dip that we've seen in other places like display advertising. So we'd love to get your help as brand marketers. Stay true, build authentic content, really engage with your customers. As publishers, same message is, let's work together to ensure that we're monetizing, finding business models that rely less on display and more on content native monetization. Thanks very much.